Welcome. We're jumping straight into a fascinating film from 2024. It first made waves at Sundance back in January.
Yeah, January 24, and then it got a wider release in theaters that November.
Right. And at its heart, the story follows two Jewish-American cousins, David and Benji. They're on a heritage tour in Poland.
A trip basically meant to honor their grandmother, who passed away recently. She was a Holocaust survivor.
And you see right away, these two guys, they're really different. David comes across as, introspective, responsible, maybe a bit neurotic.
Definitely wound tight. While Benji seems much more extroverted, kind of carefree on the surface.
It really makes you think about your own family, doesn't it? Have you ever experienced those tricky dynamics? Really different personalities or that shared history that's always kind of there?
Oh, absolutely. And the film uses that contrast, that initial setup, not just for like comedy beats, but as a starting point for something much deeper. You might go in thinking, okay, comedy drama, but pretty quickly you realize it's really digging into the messiness of family relationships.
Yeah.
And running underneath all of it is this sense of historical trauma.
Right.
As third-generation survivors, these cousins are carrying, anxieties, maybe some depression, these big existential questions, stuff that gets passed down, sometimes without anyone even saying it out loud.
Exactly. It's like they're both carrying this invisible weight, their family's history, but also just their own personal struggles.
Yeah.
And the film seems to be asking, okay, where does your own individual baggage end and the impact of the past begin?
That's a great way to put it. And it also brings up this really interesting question about empathy, I think.
How so?
Well, how well can we really understand someone else's pain, especially pain rooted in something as enormous as, incomprehensible as the Holocaust? It is. And what's insightful is how the film shows that difficulty, that challenge of truly getting someone else's experience, even within the same family, sharing this huge historical connection.
So the trip itself, the journey through Poland, it's like an outer journey reflecting an inner one.
Precisely. It forces them to confront not just the shared past, but also who they are as individuals, within that whole context. It's a real process of self-discovery happening against this very specific backdrop.
It feels like it comes down to those basic family ties, right? That need we all have for connection, even when the relationships are, messy, complicated.
Definitely. And it's bigger than just the Holocaust history, too. It touches on, past mistakes, family stories, shared moments, all the stuff that shapes us.
Yeah. How do we actually live with all that history as people, as families?
The film really seemed to wrestle with that, both the personal stories and the bigger collective memory, family heritage, cultural heritage. This Poland trip becomes this kind of pressure cooker, forcing them to deal with their grandmother's past, but also their own relationship, what it means to be them, Jewish Americans now.
That generational weight feels almost like another character in the film sometimes.
It really does. It influences how they react, maybe in ways they don't even fully realize.
And it's interesting you mention that because I read one take on the film that saw a thread of mental health running through it, especially with Benji.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Beyond just the carefree exterior, maybe there are hints of deeper struggles.
Possibly. And there's also this undercurrent of grief, isn't there? Obviously for the grandmother, but maybe something bigger, a sense of loss.
A sense of something missing, perhaps. And I liked how one review pointed out the film's way of showing people's complexity.
You mean like the mix of good and bad?
Exactly. How seemingly negative actions can sometimes, unexpectedly, lead to something positive.
Yeah.
It avoids making things black and white.
Which feels very true to life. People are rarely just one thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It embraces those contradictions. And layered in there, maybe subtly, is a bit of commentary on, historical tourism.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Just that slight risk,
Yeah.
of these incredibly important places becoming kind of a box-ticking exercise.
Yeah.
Losing the profound weight of it all in the act of visiting.
Right, the superficiality trap. Okay, let's really get into the core dynamic here. David, played by Jesse Eisenberg, and Benji, who is Kieran Culkin.
Yes. That relationship feels like the absolute engine of the film.
It really does. And they're not just simple opposites, are they? It's more complex than that. There's this mix of envy, irritation. It feels very real.
So authentic.
Yeah.
And Kieran Culkin's performance as Benji, wow. It's been getting incredible praise.
Oh, yeah. People are calling it raw, nuanced.
Charming, but also so vulnerable.
Some are saying it's one of the best performances of 2024, and the awards certainly back that up.
Definitely. The Oscar, BAFTA, Golden Globes, Critics' choice.
Yeah.
Quite the haul.
What makes it so compelling, do you think?
Well, it's that sense of Benji being this walking contradiction. You can be incredibly magnetic, pull people in, but also emotionally draining. There's an interpretation of him perhaps as having this kind of vulnerable narcissism.
Okay, tell me more about that.
You see the charm, right? But also the dysregulation, the impulsivity, those sudden collapses into sadness. He seems to be grappling with these big existential issues.
Yeah.
Grief, maybe a kind of failure to launch.
Right. He's the type who, even when he's being kind of difficult or even unkind, he still provokes a reaction, creates these moments.
That they might be awkward, but they're memorable. And you see the tour group reacting differently. Some are annoyed, others are almost drawn in.
Yeah. And for David, his cousin, it's just this constant swirl of feelings, isn't it? Love, pity, guilt, worry.
Frustration, anger.
Yeah.
It's all in there.
Directed at Benji.
And it's interesting, Benji doesn't seem to lash out with overt anger much. When he feels shame, the reaction seems to be more towards sadness, which is quite telling. But then there's also that sense of entitlement, maybe, like the rules don't quite apply to him, alongside this real spark of creativity.
And then you've got Jesse Eisenberg as David.
Hit.
Solid performance, most agree, but maybe a bit more one-dimensional compared to Benji.
Some critics felt that way, yeah.
Yeah.
He really nails that tightly wound, anxious, rule-following guy.
The worrier, constantly concerned about Benji. And you feel his hurt when Benji is dismissive or just doesn't seem interested in his life.
He's definitely the more stable anchor in that relationship, contrasting with Benji's volatility.
Right. And the supporting cast, Will Sharp, Jennifer Grey, they're seen as competent, but maybe don't leave quite the same impression.
They're fine, but the focus is so intensely on the two leads. That contrast is just so vital. David's stability, his sort of conventional success,
Yeah.
it seems to both annoy Benji and maybe make him feel a bit inadequate.
Could be. Eisenberg's performance, even if less flashy, is crucial as that grounding force for Culkin to play off of.
Absolutely essential.
Okay, what about Eisenberg wearing the director's hat here too? His direction got praised for feeling authentic, emotionally honest.
Yeah, managing that tricky balance between wit and, seriousness.
And the screenplay, which he also wrote, actually won a BAFTA for Best Original Screenplay.
Which says a lot. Compelling story, even if some people found the plot maybe a little predictable in places.
But the pacing felt good, and the chemistry between the leads.
Oh, definitely. That chemistry is undeniable. And I thought the way he used music, or rather the lack of it, that was really smart.
You mean like dropping the score when they visit the concentration camp?
Exactly. At Majdanek. Just letting the silence and the reality of the place hit you, no manipulation. It shows real sensitivity.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Though the point about some supporting characters feeling a bit basic, maybe that suggests the directing focus was just laser sharp on the cousins.
Perhaps. What about the look of the film? The cinematography?
Mackay Dumek's work. It's described as really beautiful, thoughtful. Apparently, they even use different lenses to try and reflect each character's internal state.
Oh, that's clever.
And the way Poland depicted, people admired that it wasn't just a typical travelogue,
Yeah.
avoided the cliches.
It still captured the landscape.
Yeah, beautifully. And those images of Majdanek, incredibly haunting. They really feed into the film's core themes.
Right. And the soundtrack? Mostly Chopin.
Mostly Chopin, which generally fits well. Though some mentioned a few musical choices felt a little jarring or out of place.
Okay. And they filmed in New York and Poland?
Yeah, with these montages showing Poland's beauty. There's a kind of languorous style to the cinematography sometimes. Like it encourages you to just slow down and really look, observe.
So stepping back from it all.
Yeah.
What's the overall feeling the film leaves you with? What are the main takeaways?
Well, it really feels like this blend of humor and heartache, doesn't it? Exploring family, heritage, just human relationships. And it definitely doesn't offer up any neat little bows at the end. It suggests that pain, historical pain, personal pain, it often just lingers. It becomes part of who you are.
Yeah, no easy resolutions.
No. And one really interesting lens to view it through is seeing it as being about the difficulty of knowing what to do with or about someone like Benji, someone with that kind of vulnerable, complicated, sometimes difficult presentation.
Almost like navigating vulnerable narcissism in real life.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if the filmmakers intended that specific reading to come through so strongly.
It definitely sounds like a film that stirs up complex feelings in the viewer, kind of mirroring the messy reality of relationships with challenging people.
Very much so. I've heard the final scene is particularly impactful, too.
But it's fair to say not everyone loved it, right? Some found it underwhelming.
Yeah, reactions varied. Some viewers found it maybe pointless or didn't connect with the characters, found them unlikable, perhaps. It just shows how subjective film is. But I think its strength really lies in that nuanced portrayal of these flawed people and their tangled relationship. It doesn't flinch from the discomfort, and it doesn't offer easy outs.
So wrapping things up, we've talked about this 2024 film, how it digs into family, history, self-discovery on this Poland trip. We've definitely highlighted Kieran Culkin's standout performance.
Incredible performance.
And Eisenberg's directing and writing, the visuals. It really wrestles with those complicated family ties and the many shades of human pain. Gives you a lot to chew on.
It really does. And maybe the final thought for you listening is this. Think about your own experiences within your family, or maybe with people who present their own unique challenges. How do those resonate with what you see in this film? What does a story like this tell us about connection, about understanding, and about the long shadow of our past?